Big Hurt Frank Thomas was one of the most popular players of his generation, and his 90 Leaf rookie card is certainly considered one of the finest cards from that era of baseball card collecting. Over the years, his PSA 9 cards have not necessarily been the most valuable cards simply because there are so many in circulation. But with the spike in interest for these 89, 90, 91 rookie cards, Frank Thomas's card has certainly felt the effects of the market overall. And if you take a look at his PSA 9, as you can see, the last trade was $49 on the pit, but this card is now seeing a regular sales for around 55 to 60 in around the market. And as you can see, in mid-April, this card was selling for $30, and since then, it's been steadily rising to its last sale price of $49. There are two of these listed on the pit right now for $59, which is about the same price that you're seeing them for on eBay. But with how the market has been rising recently, it's important to notice that the PSA 9s are now moving in the same trajectory as the PSA 10s. And as you can see, the PSA 10 last sold for $375 on the pit, and it's currently listed for $400. So what's incredible about this card is that it's not exactly the rarest card in the world. We'll take a look at the sales history real quick. But what's staggering about this particular card of these PSA 10s, such as Randy Johnson's 89 Upper Deck and some other Hall of Fame rookies from 88, 89, 90, 91 era, have doubled in price. Frank Thomas's card has seen a much more substantial rise. You can see just from since April 13th, this card sold for $179, and just 10 days later, it sold for $335. So it all nearly doubled in the space of 10 days, and then by May 2nd, this card was $375, and a couple of those sold on May 2nd. So this card continues to just absolutely fly through the roof. So it's more than doubled, and it's very much on its way to tripling in price. So the question here is are we going to see the PSA 9 follow a similar trajectory? I would say probably not, but I would say that we could see the PSA 9 continue to rise in price. If you take a look at the PSA population of this card, there are 17,000 graded with about 3,400 PSA 10. So that means about 1 in 5 to 1 in 6 of these are graded a PSA 10. So if you were to send in 6 random copies, it's most likely that you're only going to get one of those graded in a PSA 10. And when it comes to 9s, there's 9,700 of those. So about 1 in 2 grade a PSA, about with a chance, with maybe a third of a chance of those getting a PSA 8. So if you know your grading and you know what a mint card, if you're really good at identifying mint cards with no incredibly noticeable flaws, you have a pretty good chance at getting 4 9s or maybe even 3 9s and 2 10s. That's possible. So there's definitely a lot of room for this card to. I think there's still room for this card to grow in PSA 9 and PSA 10. Of course, it has much more room to grow in PSA 10. But if we start seeing the PSA 10 continue to rise, and we just had quite a few of these 9s move just recently in the last couple of days. I think it's very likely that the PSA 10 will eventually, it could eventually even breach $100. But again, considering that it's more likely you'll get for every 5, you're probably only getting 110, maybe even 1 in 6 10s. There's going to be about 4 times as many 9s as there are 10s. So there's a good chance that the PSA 9 could reach $100, especially if the demand keeps up for these particular cards. Because what's happened is now that some of these cards are getting up to these higher prices, some people might decide, hey, maybe I'd rather buy 4 PSA 9s rather than, or 5 PSA 9s rather than 110, and potentially, reap the profits later of the 9s rather than buying a 110. But of course, the 10s are always going to be more sought after in the market. So it's pretty staggering the absolute meteoric rise. And I think, in my opinion, this is a bit of a market correction. Frank Thomas, of course, one of the best of all time at the plate. Over 500 home runs. He was just an incredible player. It's possible he could hit even more, but of course he over time he was basically limited to just DH and didn't necessarily even get to play every day. But when he did play, his bat was still pretty powerful even up till the end, towards the end of his career with the Blue Jays and the Oakland A's. So Frank Thomas just an iconic player from that era. And I personally think that there is still room for this card to even move up even further in price, especially when you consider, we're just seeing just record prices across the board. This card could easily get to $500 before this surge in the market ends, and of course with baseball likely returning soon in perhaps even early July. I think that the baseball market's probably not going to slow down. So if you're looking at this card, I would say that obviously the PSA 10 is worth looking at, but the PSA 9s I feel still haven't quite caught up to the 10 as value is concerned, relative value. So let me know what you guys think of this card. I personally think that, personally, I would be more sure about the 10 than the 9s, but because the 9s are still, they're still around that $60 price point, still very, very much a bargain compared to the 10. It might be worth picking up some 9s rather than the 10. So what would you do? Would you invest in multiple 9s or one 10? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. So happy collecting, everyone. We'll be back soon with more market mover reports.